The autumn of 1888 was a season of fear in London. The city was a place of great contrasts. Grand buildings stood near sprawling slums. In the East End, the district of Whitechapel was a world of its own. Its streets were narrow and poorly lit. A thick, soupy fog often rolled in from the River Thames, clinging to the grimy brickwork of the buildings. This fog could swallow sounds and hide figures in its grey embrace. It was a place where thousands of people lived in extreme poverty. They were packed into overcrowded lodging houses, each struggling to survive another day in a harsh and unforgiving city. It was a world largely invisible to the wealthier residents of London, a place where life was cheap. This was the backdrop for a series of terrifying events. The people of Whitechapel were already familiar with hardship and violence. Drunken brawls were common. Desperation often led to crime. But what was about to happen was different. It was a new kind of horror, one that seemed to arise from the very shadows of the district. The gas lamps cast long, dancing shadows that played tricks on the eyes. Every dark alleyway seemed to hold a potential threat. The air itself felt heavy with a sense of dread, as if the city was holding its breath, waiting for something terrible to unfold in its darkest corners. The community was vulnerable, and its residents, especially the women, were exposed to the dangers of the street. Life for many women in Whitechapel was incredibly precarious. They had few options to earn a living. Many were forced into sex work simply to pay for a bed for the night. These women lived on the margins of society. They were often ignored, forgotten, and unprotected. Their lives were a constant struggle against poverty, hunger, and illness. They were mothers, daughters, and sisters, each with her own story, her own hopes, and her own fears. It is crucial to remember them not as mere statistics in a crime report, but as individuals whose lives were tragically cut short. They were the ones who walked these dangerous streets, facing the nightly risks that came with their desperate circumstances. This environment of poverty and neglect created the perfect hunting ground for a predator. The lack of street lighting made it easy for someone to move unseen. The crowded, maze-like streets offered countless escape routes. The police force was not equipped to handle such a cunning and brutal killer. Forensic science was in its infancy. This combination of social neglect, a difficult urban landscape, and limited police methods allowed a monster to emerge from the fog. He would become a phantom, a terrifying legend whose name would echo through history. He would forever be known by the chilling name he gave himself, Jack the Ripper. The terror began in late August 1888. It was then that the body of Mary Ann Nichols was discovered. Her death marked the start of a period of intense fear that gripped the entire city of London. Over the next 10 weeks, a series of brutal murders followed. The victims were all women from the Whitechapel area. Their names were Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. These women, who became known as the Canonical Five, were the undisputed victims of this single, horrific killer. He attacked them in the dead of night, in public or semi-public places where they should have been safe. The brutality of the attacks shocked even a city accustomed to violence. What made these crimes so uniquely terrifying was the killer's method and his seeming invisibility. He was not just a murderer, he was a butcher. The victims were not only killed, but their bodies were mutilated with a cold and terrifying precision. The killer seemed to possess some anatomical knowledge, suggesting he might be a doctor or someone with surgical skills. This detail added a layer of chilling sophistication to the crimes. He would strike quickly and silently, then vanish back into the labyrinthine streets of the East End. He left behind a scene of unimaginable horror, but almost no clues. It was as if a ghost was stalking the city, leaving a trail of blood in its wake. The killer's audacity reached its peak when he began to communicate with the police and the press. A letter, signed with the now infamous name Jack the Ripper, was sent to a central news agency. The letter taunted the police for their inability to catch him. "I am down on whores, and I shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled," it read. Whether this letter was genuinely from the killer or a cruel hoax, it had a massive impact. The name Jack the Ripper was born, and it spread like wildfire. It gave the faceless terror a name, turning the unknown killer into a legendary boogeyman who haunted the nightmares of an entire nation. The media frenzy fueled the public's panic and fascination. The fear in Whitechapel was palpable. Women were afraid to walk the streets after dark. Vigilante groups formed, patrolling the alleys and lanes, determined to catch the killer themselves. The police were under immense pressure, with hundreds of officers flooding the area, but they were always one step behind. The killer seemed to mock their efforts, striking again and again with impunity. The murders of Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes on the same night, the so-called double event, showed his chilling confidence. He was a phantom who ruled the autumn nights, a symbol of the darkness that lay beneath the surface of Victorian society. He was everywhere and nowhere at once. As the police investigation floundered, the list of potential suspects grew longer and more varied. With no arrests and very little evidence, speculation ran wild. Theories about the Ripper's identity ranged from the plausible to the utterly fantastic. More than 100 individuals were named as suspects over the years. Each new theory brought a new face to the phantom. Was he a local resident hiding in plain sight? Or was he a visitor to Whitechapel, someone who could easily blend in and disappear? The mystery of his identity became as compelling as the crimes themselves, a puzzle that generations of detectives and historians would try to solve. Several key suspects have remained at the center of the debate. One popular theory pointed to Montague John Druitt, a barrister and schoolteacher who was found drowned in the Thames shortly after the last murder. His own family suspected him, and his death conveniently coincided with the end of the killing spree. Another prominent suspect was Aaron Kosminski, a Polish Jewish hairdresser who lived in Whitechapel and suffered from severe mental illness. He had a known hatred of women and was eventually institutionalized. A senior police official even named him as the likely culprit in his private notes, making him a very strong candidate in the eyes of many researchers. Other theories were even more sensational. Some suggested the killer was a member of the upper class, perhaps even royalty. Sir William Gull, the Queen's own physician, was accused in a popular theory that linked the murders to a royal conspiracy involving Prince Albert Victor, Queen Victoria's grandson. This theory claimed the murders were part of an elaborate cover-up to silence women who knew about the prince's secret marriage. Another suspect was Walter Sickert, a famous artist who was fascinated by the dark side of London life. Some believe he confessed to the crimes through clues hidden within his paintings, turning his art into a map of his guilt. Each suspect brought a new narrative to the Ripper story. There was Soren Kosowski, also known as George Chapman, a poisoner who was executed for murdering 3 of his wives. An investigating officer at the time famously said, "You've got Jack the Ripper at last," after his conviction. The sheer variety of suspects, doctors, barbers, artists, and even a supposed female killer dubbed Jill the Ripper, demonstrates the complete lack of consensus. The evidence against each one is purely circumstantial. Without any definitive proof, every theory is just another story, another mask for the faceless killer who terrorized London and then vanished forever. The fundamental reason the Jack the Ripper case remains unsolved is the absence of conclusive evidence. In 1888, forensic science was not what it is today. Police relied on basic detective work, witness interviews, and simple observation. There were no fingerprinting techniques, no DNA analysis, and no crime scene photography as we know it. The killer left no personal items behind, and the few witness descriptions were vague and contradictory. He was described as being both short and tall, well-dressed and shabby. He was a man of shadows, and the tools available to the Victorian police were simply not sharp enough to bring him into the light. This lack of resolution is precisely why the mystery continues to captivate us. An unsolved puzzle is always more intriguing than one that has been solved. The Jack the Ripper story is the ultimate cold case. It invites endless speculation and allows each new generation to play detective. Books, documentaries, and websites are constantly proposing new suspects and re-examining old evidence. The story has become a genre of its own, a dark corner of history where amateurs and experts alike can search for answers. The mystery is a blank canvas, and people are drawn to the idea that they might be the one to finally paint the killer's true face. The story also endures because it speaks to some of our deepest fears. It is a tale of a faceless monster who preys on the vulnerable, a bogeyman who is not a supernatural creature but a human being. The fact that he was never caught suggests that evil can strike and then simply disappear without a trace. This idea is profoundly unsettling. The Ripper has become more than a historical criminal. He is a symbol of the unknown darkness that can exist within society and even within human nature itself. He represents the terrifying possibility that a monster could be anyone, a neighbor, a doctor, or a stranger passing in the street. This timeless fear ensures his legend never fades. Ultimately, the Jack the Ripper mystery is special because it is not just a story about a killer. It is a story about a specific time and place. It is a story about Victorian London, its stark social inequalities, the struggles of the poor, and the birth of modern media. The murders expose the dark underbelly of a society that prided itself on progress and civility. The victims, once forgotten women on the margins, are now remembered, their stories finally being told. The enigma of Jack the Ripper forces us to look into the shadows of the past, and in doing so, we learn as much about the world he inhabited as we do about the man himself. That is why, even today, he remains an object of unending fascination.